Hello and welcome to Pro Wrestling 101. I am your co-host JP John Poz from the two-man power trip of wrestling, and of course the star of the show, the man of the hour, too sweet to be sour, the former ECW World Heavyweight Champion, ECW World Tag Team Champion, PJ Polaco, just incredible. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, John. How are you, sir?
Very good, very good. Can't complain. Keeping
Good.
very busy. I know you'll be keeping busy. Can't really
Yeah,
discuss any of the parameters, but you'll be keeping busy in the next couple days,
yeah.
for sure, which is really
I'm
cool.
very nervous to go back out on the road. Not
Mm,
because of COVID. I'm okay with protecting myself and wearing a mask and all that, but just I haven't done it on a high level for so long, and I don't want fans to think there's like some big surprise happening because it's not something small.
mm,
But for me, I've lost a lot of confidence in what
mm.
I do, so it'll be interesting. I'm actually losing sleep over it. But anyways, because I'm not at peak wrestling condition. I'm a bit overweight, to say it lightly. So it is what it is. But I'm just happy to get back there.
Hey, it happens. So hey,
Yeah,
go to your
yeah.
natural instincts, for
That's
sure.
all. That's all.
Yeah. Now, as far as today's episode here on the
Yes.
Russo brand, which is on Vince Russo's YouTube channel, of course, a part of Vince Russo's The Brand. You're also on Vince Russo's
Yep.
Patreon, which is patreon.com/Russo TWC, where you do an awesome AEW review show. But today,
Yes.
on today's episode, I wanted to mention a great topic that you've spoken about before in Pro Wrestling 101. That is knowing your place on the card. I feel like me, especially, my mind is all over the place. I'm watching some of these cards and especially
Yeah.
AEW, I feel like, oh my God, like, do they know like the first match? They know the second match. Like, how do you follow that? How is the main event? I know it might be, oh, can you top this? Follow that kind of attitude. But
Sure.
as far as knowing your place in the card, is there a place for everyone on the card? Like they need to know where they are. You're looking at the board before you go into the, into the arena. You see the matches. Do you know your place on the card, quote unquote?
Well, I mean, you certainly should. And at times, I mean, I know that the time I'm talking about, just so fans are familiar, is a good 20 something years ago. I'm talking about the Aldo Montoya years from like 1994 to 1997. But even it relates to the ECW years, where I ran into this from a different angle. Of course, when you're the first match on the show, I was always taught that you want to put on a fun, exciting match, but keep it fairly basic. You don't want to, you don't want to give the fans so much that they're underwhelmed as the card is progressing. It's almost like you want to take them on a roller coaster ride. That's the reason there's a popcorn match when you bring them back when there's live wrestling from intermission. You want to give them time to get back in the arena to after they grab their beer or their popcorn or their hot dogs, whatever. So everybody has a specific place. WWE had the way they did it was they would normally have the main. And I was with Tommy Wildfire Rich a couple days ago, and we were
Oh,
talking about this. Yeah, we were talking. We'd had a signing in Queens, New York for
oh, that's
Wrestling
right.
Universe. Yeah,
That's right. Duh. Yep.
yeah, and we were talking about this. And the few times he worked for Vince up at the Garden, he was surprised to see that the main event, the big main event that was advertised, was in fact right before intermission instead of dead last. So they would put on, a good match last. Don't get me wrong, but the big main event that was advertised was right before intermission for several reasons, and I always found that curious. But for a lot of years, the opening match was myself and Savio Vega, Chris Candido, Justin Hawk Bradshaw before he was JBL, and many others. I can go on, but your job was to put on an exciting 10 minutes of wrestling. But you also look, I mean, let's face it, you don't want to do someone else's finish. You don't want to do 100 super kicks in a match because look, when fans see something once, it's a big deal, especially live. Live is a whole different animal than television. But when you start to see it several times over and over and over again, it really loses its emphasis, and you can get stuck in a precarious situation where the fans just aren't biting. So you want to keep the action fresh, both the moves and the type of match you're giving them. So it's very important to kind of know your flow of, okay, this is what the office expects of me. This is what the fans, you want to look at that card. when we go into that locker room and the card is posted, let's just say a nice number for me was always like 8 matches, maybe 5 matches before intermission and then 3 afterward. And really kind of look at it and say, okay, the fans will enjoy this. And at this part of the show, they may be a little tired, so I don't want to overindulge, because a lot of times I find that the young men and women out there are really indulging themselves instead of really worrying about the flow of the show and how smooth it's going to be. And you must understand that the main event is, everyone sells the product, which is either WWE or AEW or NWA, whatever it may be. But as a whole, you really want to concentrate on the fan and see, are they getting what they really wanted out of this and their experience. So you really have to look at it from that aspect.
I always feel like the first match could be the most important of the show. Is that right? I mean, do you want to set the tone with that first match?
You really, really do, because that's when the fans are the hungriest. That's when they're just, who knows how long it's been since they've been to a live wrestling show. I mean, I used to love being on first, and I found that out in ECW, and I wanted to talk to you about this as well, was, I would be first match and, don't do too much, kid, keep it simple. You don't want to, you really want to keep it to a basic, because you don't want to go out there and do other people's moves, and also, though, not just that, be overindulgent where you're doing 100 false finishes. Me and Candido used to get into a bit of trouble back in the old days when he was Skip from the Body Donnas, and we were working singles matches at the time. We did about 15 shows back to back, and it was smaller B towns up in the Catskills in Pennsylvania, and all around the Massachusetts area, smaller casino style, high school style shows, college shows. And we would take advantage and do like Flair Steamboat, like literally. We'd do like a bunch of their spots and go long. And it wasn't even so much that we were going long and doing crazy moves. We'd have like 15 false finishes. And then people are like, well, wow, you guys are kind of taking advantage of the crowd is fresh. And of course, we were hungry and young. We wanted to move up on the card. So we were thinking, well, look, they're popping and we're getting this great response and we're having fun with it, doing all these cool things. But in essence, we were, looking back at it, you were really taking away from the people that sold the tickets. And it's not that they mind, as far as, well, I get to work a couple of minutes less. They're probably grateful. But you don't want to take the pop away. You don't want to take the importance away. And you certainly don't want to say that match number 1 was better than the last match on the card or, the main event on the card. So, it's just the first match on the card for me was always supposed to be a nice, high-paced match where you throw in, really shine the babyface. The first match is a feel-good match where the babyface, whoever it may be, gets to do all his cool stuff and has some fun with it. And, just a quick paced, tell a story kind of match. Almost like when WCW used to open up Nitro with those cruiserweight matches, like a real entertaining sort of match. And then, you'd move to, maybe a tag team match or, a woman's match they used to do early on in the card. And then, of course, depending on where you were, like a tag match was always either a good way to finish the show, because there wouldn't be a lot of tag matches back in those days on the shows. It would either be the main event or right before intermission. So it was cool. And but yeah, the first match is probably one of the most important matches. That and the last match. I mean, you bookend it, right? The first match and the last match are what the people are going to go home with, and then everything in between is just content, and I mean content in a good way. Like that's how you really fill the bulk of the show. But those two are what people are going to remember and take home. As far as, wow, this was a great show, or there was good moments, but I was disappointed at the end. And vice, flip it on that. If you open the show in a very lackluster way, then fans are gonna be, they don't want to cheer, because at first, man, fans are afraid to cheer. That's why, like at a rock concert, when the lights go off and they go down, people aren't, because when there's a lighting is huge, because when you have a lot of lights on, you're worried about what Johnny next to you is, that you don't know, or a bunch of people are looking at you act a fool, sitting there
Yep.
cheering and pumping your fist or whatever.
Yep.
So when the lights go off, man, it's about having fun, and that's what that first match is, and they're fresh and they're ready to go, and right there you dictate what happens for the rest of the card. Are the fans going to be hot? Are they going to be, you know so that first match has so much importance, and Tony Gurria and Rene Goulet were the ones that really taught me those early lessons of how important, and structurally, the structure of it was so important for live wrestling events.
The thing is, with some of the first matches I could think of that are like great. Brett Owen, WrestleMania 10 might be the best match in the
Yeah.
card, period. But I mean, you
Yep.
just think of like, wow, I mean, and I was there live. So I mean, it's like, wow, holy shit. Like
Yep.
that gets you into it. It's like, holy
Yep.
god damn, like what a match. So it could definitely get you into it, but it also going to have the reverse effect too, right? If it's not good, you're like, well, that's, that kind of sucked. That was a shit. Like, oh man, like no contest or like a DQ fin. Like, what was that first match? So sometimes it can work with the reverse, right?
Yep, it absolutely can, and like it's in people at home, and look, a lot of times fans almost ruin it for themselves by over-educating themselves in wrestling, where they're reading these things, and kind of like, what did the fans think, or what did Dave Meltzer think about this match and that match, instead of just going out there with watching a show like you would watch a movie, just with like an organic feeling of, I'm just going to enjoy this. And if we can get fans to do that and just simply enjoy the show the way you want to, I think that's the ultimate experience, where you just kind of let yourself mark out. But yeah, opening match is probably the most important match on the show.
So I know you dissect with Russo on Patreon,
Yes.
on his Patreon, you dissect AEW, but it's just always on my mind with them, even like the Young Bucks or whoever on the card, but just more specifically, always pops in my head. It's like, do they know like they're placing the card? They're killing it for the main event. I always kind of think that with them, and it always seems to happen more so in AEW. I don't know if
Right.
the agents aren't controlling it. Tony Khan's not controlling it. The boys are not controlling it.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, the Young Bucks just did this, this, and this, and literally every move in the book,
Sure.
1,000 super kicks. Doesn't that kind of kill it for later on in the card?
Well, it does. I don't care what people say. It does for me as a viewer, and I think it does for a lot of fans, and they may not even know why. But yeah, it certainly does. And look, there's a difference between knowing your place on the card, meaning literally your place on that night's show, not necessarily what it means your place in this business is, or in that company. We obviously know that the Young Bucks are, one of the key talents in AEW, if not the entire wrestling world. So we know that they're a big deal. It's just, when you, me, or anybody else goes out there, I think we think to ourselves, what is the best I could do for the show, for the, just to put out a good show. What does that look like to me, and how do I accomplish that? And I don't know. I always ask that question with Vince as well, like who's in charge, and who's because they have some great minds, man. I don't know to what capacity these guys work for AEW in. Like I know they have Arn Anderson. I know Tully Blanchard's there to always listen, and I'm sure help if he was asked. Jerry Lynn, Billy Gunn, it goes on and on. Dustin Rhodes. So many guys that know all the same things I'm telling you, if not know it better than me. So by no means is there a lack of knowing this. Now you got to ask yourself: are they doing this for? Do they want to change the way kind of things are? Or, it kind of seems that way, because if you really look at, like, for example, last week AEW, the first match out the gate was about 14 plus minutes. That's a lot of wrestling for the first match on a show. And anyway, whether it's a house show, pay-per-view, it's just a very long match. And you have to assume that not everybody's into strong style or, Japanese style wrestling. I think for the most part, fans just want to get entertained. And I think the mentality of not just AEW, but a lot of younger wrestlers and wrestling is let's just go out there and do everything but the kitchen sink, man. And I think, that's why, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of memorable shows. Like I remember, man, you always remember The Rock and Stone Cold finishing those shows with those segments and all that classic stuff, and the Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair era, and so forth. I mean, those are things you don't forget. And for a very long time, at least in AEW's run, I can't remember of one show that from start to finish, I'm talking pay-per-views and weekly Dynamite shows, that has accomplished that. It's usually you get some great content, but it's all over the map. And I think they fail to really, complete the movie, so to speak, if wrestling was a movie or the TV show. And they also, a lot of times, don't advance storylines with the way they are wrestling. Because a lot of times, things are supposed to go somewhere. You're supposed to be telling a story about your character and where it's going. And a lot of times I don't feel they're moving along storyline. So I just feel it's wrestling for wrestling's sake, but they seem to be okay with it. And I think they seem to think that's what the fans want. So I think we're going to just keep saying a bit more of it.
What do you think about, like, let's just say AEW? They're wrestling on the card. Bucks are doing every move in the business under the sun. Omega's doing every move under the sun. They're not in the main event. What does like Moxley say? Because he's probably going to be the main event. What
Sure.
does Cody Rhodes say? Do they say anything to these guys? Like, hey, maybe not this and that. I mean, Bucks even at one point stole Omega's move and did Omega's move before Omega was wrestling. I was
Yeah,
like, what the,
I don't know, man. I would love to be a fly on the wall to kind of go through a full day of AEW Dynamite. I would love to see, be involved in the production meetings. I would love to kind of see what the mentality is. And I just honestly, I think we as writers, journalists, whatever that we do when we podcast, we're just kind of all over the place with trying to put together what's going on in the business. But I don't think they're just they're not thinking about it as hard as I think a lot of the fans are and a lot of us are in this business that are covering these things. I just think they're going out there and just having at it. I really do. I really do, because Chris Jericho knows this stuff better than, like I said,
yep.
better than anybody, or as good as anybody. So does Dustin, and so does Cody, even Cody, and all the other great people. You can't tell me Jim Ross don't know. I mean, you could hear it in his commentary at times.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
This he can't hold himself back. But we'll see. I mean, we'll see. The fans seem to enjoy it, and I guess at the end of the day, that's really what is important. And the ratings have the only frustration with me is ratings. No matter what you tell me, and I sometimes have disagreed with Vince Russo on the fact that the numbers have pretty much stayed the same for 53 weeks that we've been going into this. I think next week's episode, their anniversary is actually 54. It's number 54. So I just don't think they're really that concerned about it as far as growing viewers, because look, you already have the smarts. You already have the smart marks that are going to watch your show regardless. I would imagine that now you would want to try to get that number up into the millions sooner than later. You've had a year brushing with 800, 850. This week was 866, I believe, 866,000. But still, I mean, advertisers after a while are going to be, like, this is a prime time slot, so, and they're going to be running unopposed, and that's not such a great number. I mean, you have to also understand that NXT is still, in my opinion, even though I don't believe those guys are anyway developmental, but it's still regarded as a developmental territory.
Yep.
So really that's, AEW's cream of the crop against Vince's number 3 brand. So, you got to kind of see it like that. I would love to start seeing them flirt with 1.2, 1.5 million viewers a week, which I would imagine is where TNT would want them. So, hopefully we'll see, but just not buying into that. This particular roster has what it takes to get there, like Miro, for example, as well. And I know we're straying a little off topic of knowing your role on the card, but I'll bring it back if I can. Miro has been introduced in a very poor way. And he's somebody that could, wrestle anybody and have a great match with anybody. And he's in the prime of his career. And here he is being the second man to Kip Sabian, who I barely know who he is, and Penelope Ford, who is a very attractive young lady that could work and very entertaining, And again, I think they're just wrestling for themselves. It's like, all right, if I had a backyard fed like I used to have when I was 15, how am I going to book this? They're booking it for themselves. And I think that's what we're seeing,
I'm a little surprised that Miro kind of is okay with his place. It's like, okay, you debut as the best man, the best friend, some guy that's hardly on the card. Let's just say he's a lower card guy, to say the least. I mean, he's hardly ever on the show. He's on Dark, I guess, but that doesn't really count. So you debut as like his buddy, and you're not even like his bodyguard or whatever. They're kind of intimating you're his video game friend. I was like, this is horrible for like the guy Rusev who came out on a tank at WrestleMania. This is what he is, who has like this beautiful wife that they could have did this awesome gimmick with him and his wife forever with. But it's like, oh my God, that's what they're giving him. And he came out in pajamas. I was like, holy moly, what are they doing?
Yeah, it's really weird to me because I know they do want to be different from the WWE, and they have every opportunity to try to make it a real, like make the business look real. I really thought it was going to be a throwback to the old NWA days, where it looked like a wrestling, like wrestling was real. If like this is a real competition. Blood feuds are blood feuds. There's a reason why I hate this man, and I'm going to show you why. And they're just missing the boat with silliness and their kind of humor. Because if you're on national television and you're bragging about your video game, your video gaming or being a gamer, instead of looking for a run as the TNT champion or the AEW World Champion, that's kind of suspect to me. It's like, so what's your purpose here? What's your purpose as a pro wrestler? Last time I checked, any football player out there that puts on a helmet and hits the field, they want to win Super Bowls. They want to win playoff games. They want to be the best. That should be no different than wrestling. And I think they really missed the opportunity to take on that kind of role. And really, they're just as cartoonish as any other promotion out there. So, is what it is.
The only guy that comes off good to me, and correct me if I'm wrong here, only one guy, and I mean FTR is great with Tully and stuff like that, but I mean like one guy as far as like the Elite and AEW, Cody Rhodes is the only guy who comes off legitimate, real, trust, like you trust him, like I love this guy, I trust this guy, whatever he's saying, he's being real with me. I believe everything he says. He's the only one that comes off well. I mean, am I wrong on that?
You're not wrong at all, and I think nothing he does is by accident. He's got a lot of the old man in him. And what I mean is he puts himself in the proper situations to win. And it's almost like, hey, let these kids do whatever stuff that, this corny stuff that they're going to try to pull off. And let me just go out there and be a serious professional wrestler. He looks like a star. He comes out like a star. He's got an entrance like a star. And, and I think it's all by design. He's a very smart young man. So, maybe he's just giving all of these guys enough room to shoot themselves in the foot and, go from there kind of and watch them fail on their own merits.
And it's funny, knowing your place in your car, we're saying, don't do all these flips and flops and go crazy and kill do this guy's finish that. He knows his place. It's funny because he is like the star, if you think about it, with all these different people are after him, the angles and everything else. But I mean, he really knows his place. He doesn't do anything crazy. He never does other people's finishes, never does anything crazy. Right. I feel like his feud with MJF was the best thing on the show when they were feuding. Yeah. Then this thing with Brody Lee, I'm invested. You're like, wow, he kicked the shit out of him. He lost in 3 minutes. Where does it go from here? He comes back. Now he's Dark. Now they're doing a dog collar. I'm interested in that because that's going to be bloody. Yeah. When he feuded with Magnus before, really the TV show, like that was interesting as hell because that was old school and real. Dustin, his brother, that feud was awesome, and the match was awesome. So everything he does, I feel like he really knows psychology. He's mastered that, while all these other guys are doing all stupid shit. Like Omega completely lost all of what he got from Japan. He's total really mid card. And Cody, I even put Cody over Moxley. I mean, he just keeps going higher. It's in my book.
Yeah.
I feel like he's nailing it.
Yeah, and that's really something, and that really says something because you know, John Moxley, to me, he's good, he's talented, but it's almost like even the way they present him, there seems to be something that's not quite right, something that's not quite grabbing me, and it's not his ability. He's very talented. He's good at everything he does, but you know, another one is Omega. Now, all I knew from him was he was the best bout machine in New Japan Pro Wrestling, which is a very difficult place to get over as an American. And those guys did some amazing things. But to have this platform and to not take full advantage of it is a bit puzzling, really, if you think about it. I don't know whose choice that is. I don't know whose. That's what I feel like with that is I don't think AEW knows where to go as far as long-term planning, because one thing I always knew is, or I was always told, is to book backwards. Say, okay, I want John next year as my headliner for the big show. I want PJ somewhere in here next year. And how do we get from point A to point B? And to me, I just figured, okay, they're going to use Kenny, but they have no idea how to get him there. Nor are they even really trying. Like the way they present him, it's almost like, is he hurt? Is that why we're not seeing him in a lot of big matches, or what's going on? Are you waiting for something? So yeah, it's been really odd the way they've used a lot of their stars. But I'll tell you, the way they present their shows is again a lot about match placement and being able to, again, go up and down, but then crescendo at the top, and it's far from it. I almost feel like, and this happens with WWE too recently on Raw, like because Raw is a 3-hour show, I feel like they start hot, and at the end it's almost like, instead of the end being the can't miss television, it's just become, let's hope we hold on to them, and not as important. So yeah, I think the business right now with what we're talking about is placement of the show, like of your matches on the show, are really starting to change. It almost seems like it's all over the place, and they're just trying to figure it out week to week. It's a really, really odd way of doing it, but I guess that's where they're at right now,
I don't know if you noticed this too. When Omega came out the other week with shorts and a white T-shirt, did you notice
Yes.
JR making fun of him? He didn't even
Yeah.
get it. It like went over his head like the joke. But did you notice he was taking digs at him like, "Way to dress, champ! Way to dress for the occasion."
Yeah, I didn't notice it because, again, when they start talking, it just feels like it doesn't grab me. So it's a lot of times I tune it out, but Russo certainly brought it up, and yeah, it just looks like. I mean, I get it. They're in Florida. They're in Jacksonville. It's very warm, but like you said in your prior point, Cody Rhodes looks like a star.
Yep, dressed in a suit.
He's got a beautiful suit. He's got his own style. He looks like a superstar. When you watch NBA players, NFL players, whatever, go to their games, they have professional. They look like stars. They look like a big deal. And Kenny just looks like somebody that came in off the beach, sort of, So yeah, that's kind of weak too. So I out of gimmick, and unless Kenny Omega, he could be security guard. He could be somebody working for the arena. Who knows? It's not like these guys are so big, and so your selling point should be your gimmick, and you should play your gimmick all the time when you're behind the camera, or in front of the camera, I should say. And just not doing it. Just not doing it.
And you wonder why TNT was like, we want this guy, Cody Rhodes, for that show with Snoop Dogg. And it's
Yeah.
like, he looks like a star. Out of everyone on this roster, we want this guy. He's from WWE. He's got name recognition. He looks like a star. Let's put him in there with these other celebrities.
I agree. I mean, it's a no-brainer. And, who? Let me ask you this question. Who do you think after Cody, who else do you think is there anybody exciting to you, to kind of throw it back at you? Anybody exciting to you on that roster that could play on in his playground, so to speak?
Do The only guys I like is FTR with Tully. There's the only guys I like. I like Jericho, but I mean the Orange Cassidy feud killed him.
Yeah, I thought so too.
This feud now is killing him. I was surprised that Matt Hardy's been so lame there. He's
Yeah.
not been himself. He's been a little off. I know it's something. I can't think of anybody else like that. I mean, Orange Cassidy I think stinks. I don't think Darby Allin has what it takes. I don't know. Ricky Starks is kind of growing on me a little bit, just because
A
I know
little
I like.
bit, yeah.
Yeah, like he dresses good. He's a decent
Yep.
worker. He's a really good talker. He's starting to grow on me. It's funny. It's like all the guys that shouldn't be like on my radar. Jake the
Are
Snake, Taz,
yeah.
Orange. Like these guys are supposed to be the guys getting these guys. Those guys I'm interested, not in the actual wrestlers.
Yeah.
I feel like Brody Lee, the gimmick is killing him a little bit. I really like him, but the gimmick is kind of killing it for me.
Yeah.
Honestly, after Cody, maybe MJF. I'll throw out MJF is
Yes.
maybe the only other guy. Those two guys. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Everyone
I
else is
agree. Yeah, I agree. And that's a real problem, I think, because wow, especially like what Matt Hardy had the freedom to do in Impact Wrestling with the Broken Universe. Or I wasn't a real fan of it. I didn't watch much of it, but from what I understand, they did some pretty cool stuff. And I figured they would just give these guys a lot of room to play. And it seems like they're almost shackled by it. Like I don't
Yep.
understand where they're going with a lot of this stuff. Jake Hager. I mean, this guy was possibly world champion material. Wasn't he world champion at one point?
Oh yeah, a few times in WWE. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
come on. And now you don't know anything about him, really. He's just another guy on the show. So I think they've done. And again, this is where Russo and I always talk about is even interviews now. Interviews deserve a place on the card. Now, cards and TV are two different things, but do you need a 16, 17-minute match where you already know the outcome? That's a big pet peeve of mine. Why do you have to go so long where the person, who's going to win right out of the gate, right? And that's been a huge problem for me watching AEW is you're watching all these long matches, but the finish is very obvious. And then instead, why don't you shorten it up, take about half of that time and shoot some promos, get to know these people. I think that would advance the show and really help the product out because right now, for me, it's just way too much wrestling. And like I said, by the time you reach the end of the show, you've seen every damn move you're going to see and probably some new ones if there's anything else out there. Like I remember the first match this past week was in the first 5 minutes. It was an apron bump and a bunch of dives. First match.
Yep.
That's going to be hard for whoever's on last and possibly the main eventer is on last when you're doing all of this craziness on first. That's, to get back on our topic of, kind of knowing your place on the card. That's a huge thing where once you've done something like that, you can't do it again except expect anything like the response you got earlier on. So, yeah, big deal.
So knowing your place on the card and knowing your place on the roster, two completely separate things, right?
Yes. Yeah. Now more than ever, I would assume because back in the old days, it wasn't so much. A match could go either way. It was a little more like it was a little more open to it. But now it really kind of, in my opinion, it defines where you are with the company. I think now it's almost like they put it on blast that where you are on the card really is where you are in the company, or at least how they feel about you or feel about you as a character. Maybe not as a professional, but okay, like Matt Hardy, for example, you kind of know his, this is as far as Matt Hardy's going to go right now, and I don't think he's going to come back from that. And that's a huge problem for me and for him, me as a viewer, because I think Matt Hardy is a future Hall of Famer. To be squandering that kind of talent is really crazy. And the Inner Circle. I mean, all of those guys. It's like they go from hot to cold. It's just very weird. So but like for me, it's probably more on point now where the matches that they are in really is how the company is looking at them. Instead, back in the old days, where you were on the card, really, it could have been, you know, in ECW especially. I mean, you could have been opening match, and then next week you could have been in the main event. And Paul was very good at that, you know. And
Sorry about that.
sorry about that.
Yep, back. Okay.
All right, but no, in ECW, and I had a big thing when I first won the ECW title. I was really kind of I was very nervous because I knew a lot of times the ECW title match was on last. And, you know, especially nights at the ECW arena, you know, there was one night early on in my run where it was Balls and Axel against the Dudley Boys. Bubba goes out, first match of the night, cuts this long-winded promo telling fans to F off and doing his whole shtick, and then going out there with Balls and Axel, getting color and doing everything under the sun. And I got hot. I went to Paul. I was like, Paul, how am I supposed to follow that? And he goes, well, if you can't think of a way, maybe, you know, you're not right for the main event.
Wow.
So it was very much a challenge to, you know, say, look, kid, there's ways like that. That's when you got to get creative is what I'm saying is, you know, you get intimidated at times because, and it was very untraditional the way Paul booked that stuff because, you know, normally, especially, you know, in the WWE, you were very much taught that opening match should be hip toss, arm drag, grab a headlock, do a couple of spots, and that's it. And, you know, going 20 something minutes, opening up with promo and blood was very, very scary for someone that knows he's got to go on 3 hours later with Tommy Dreamer, and you don't have anything like that planned. So it really was Paul's way. And, you know, that's one way to motivate a locker room. And maybe, you know, I don't even know who's really in charge there. I guess Tony Khan.
Mm-hmm.
But that's maybe a way to motivate your guys is to give them that little, you know, that little taste, give them that, you know, dangle the carrot in front of them and say, look, guys, whoever wants it can get it. You just, this is how you got to play. And if you can't follow, then maybe, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see Tony Khan having that kind of strategic ability as a Paul Heyman, not at this point, at least. So very interesting.
Now I've talked to Shane about this, Shane Douglas, a bunch.
Yeah.
Why the hell would the Dudleys main event so many shows? Like, no offense. I mean, you had like Heat Wave '98. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you obviously, you know, you're part of that awesome card, that awesome match with
Yep.
Jerry Lynn. And it's like awesome. And then like Dudley's in the main event. I know they're going to do all the hardcore stuff. They're going to do the ECW style, but man, the whole card was awesome. You had all these awesome matches. And then like, so sometimes you can screw up the main event. And even Heyman, a great booker, it can screw up.
Well, I mean, a lot of that, I think, was it had to do with business. Business being that Bubba booked the towns. So I think it had a lot to do with trying as a businessman to kind of meet him in the middle because Mark LaMonaco, a.k.a. Bubba Ray Dudley, you know, he booked many, many shows and literally booked the buildings himself and had, you know, he was very integral in the live events and in booking live television venues. So I think it was just a way of, hey man, you know, you got to do this for me too. Like I'm going to be on that main stage. So, you know, and at the end of the day, the Dudleys, and you know, were a great act. But yeah, it's amazing. Even for Vince's return of ECW, there, what was it called? A One Night Stand. It was Dreamer and Sandman against the Dudleys.
Again, I was like, what the hell? You had that
show.
Yep. Yeah, I was like, holy crap.
You had everybody there. You had, you know, Sabu, Van Dam, whoever else you could think of. And the Dudleys.
Didn't Foley wrestle on that freaking card and he wasn't in the main event?
I'm not sure. I don't think he wrestled on that card. I think he was on the second one.
Oh, okay. But still.
Still, yeah. No, they had everybody. They had everybody on there. Yeah.
And my buddy of mine's a big ECW fan. He would say the same thing. He's like, the fucking Dudleys? He's like, what the hell? No. You know what I mean? Like, not that they're not great tag team, but they're not the main event. I mean,
right.
And I know Gabe Sapolsky, I know we mentioned this before, and I know you said this to me. Gabe Sapolsky, I know the Dudleys are gone at this point, but you were being rated as some of the best matches going when you were the champ. So it's like you deserve to be the main event. You're having the best matches.
Right.
Like you deserved it. They did not deserve to be the main event. They were not having the best matches, not even close.
Yeah, I mean, it was what it was. You know, again, it's one of those things where, you know, I just tried to work as hard as I could and put on the best pro wrestling matches I could. And, you know, and being that you're the world champion at that time, you're pretty much allowed to, regardless of where you are on the show, to go out there and deliver, being that that's usually the main storyline or one of the main storylines. So that really didn't concern me much. I'd actually prefer to go on, like I said, with WWE when they used to back in the day, go on right before intermission was a nice little treat because not the whole crowd wasn't completely burned out, and you could get in and out a lot quicker than going on dead last. So.
Now, this could be about ECW, but it's kind of about knowing your place in the card a little bit. But I'm just curious with you. I hear from a bunch of wrestlers throughout the years that they like to go on earlier so they can leave earlier and make the
Sure.
next town. Did
Yep.
any wrestlers ever say, hey, you know, I know that's not really my place in the card to be first, second, third, or right for an admission, but can I wrestle early so I
Oh
can
yeah.
get going early? Like, would that happen too? So, like, you know,
Oh yeah.
sometimes you'll see, like, oh, you know, Tito, you're like, why is he wrestling so early in the card? He probably wants
Sure.
to get out of there and go to the next town.
A lot of guys did that. A lot of guys wanted to be on as early as possible just to get moving. And
Hmm.
you'd be, I mean, it wasn't, especially if the towns weren't big towns, if they were kind of mid-level, you know, if they weren't arenas, like anytime you wrestled in big arenas, you know, you had to do what you had to do business-wise. But if you were in a small college town, maybe a 5,000 seater or so on, you know, hell, you get the main event on number 3.
Hmm.
You know, that would
Yep.
happen a lot. And, you know, a lot of times they would have, especially back in the day, they'd have the Rockers on it last, you know,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like
Yep.
or they'd have Shawn and Razor on last. They'd always have the Workers on last. And then like maybe Hulk or whoever would be as early as they could get them on, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember 89 a
Yeah.
lot. You'd see Hogan and Savage
Oh,
would be
yeah.
the intermission main event. And the real main event, when Brett was getting that singles push, he would wrestle perfect in the main event. Or, you know, they'll
Yep.
do something like that for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, again, it was well, I mean, you know, some people would say, oh, you know, the Marks wanted to go on last, and, you
Hmm.
know, and there was a little bit of Mark and Scott Hall and those guys because they
Hmm.
really, you know, not Mark, but they believed they could close the show and they wanted to, and they were cool with that. Whereas Hulk and those guys, they were just all about get me in, get me out, and get
Hmm.
me, you know, get me paid into the next town, you know.
He knew his real place on the card. He didn't have to be stacked anywhere. He knew he was always the main
Exactly,
event.
exactly, exactly.
And I think that is a great stopping point for this week. Just want to mention the
Yes.
plugs. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Two Man Power Trip. You can follow PJ on Instagram and Twitter at
Yep.
PJ Polacco. PJ, you got anything else going on as far as some public appearances and stuff?
This week I have a show in Jackson, New Jersey this Saturday. I don't know
Oh,
when
nice.
this will be dropping, but I believe it's October the 10th. I will be in Jackson. Is Jackson on, or is the 10th on Saturday?
Yep.
Then there we go. New Jersey, October 10th. I will be there, and that's pretty much it. Just check out my Twitter at PJ Pelago for any and all stuff, and of course, ProWrestlingTees.com/Just Incredible. I will be having a new T-shirt out probably within a week. I have something
Oh,
brewing, so check that
nice.
out. Yeah, stop by.
Awesome. Love that. Good
Yes.
stuff. And of course, Russo's Brand. You can follow
Yep.
Vince Russo at russosbrand.com. You can go to patreon.com/RussoTWC. Of course, Vince Russo's YouTube channel is where we're being housed and we're being home. So
Yep.
thank you to Vince Russo and all the members of the brand. Thank you, everybody,
Absolutely.
for joining us this week. PJ, please take
Yes.
us out the only way you know how.
Absolutely, John. Well, Pro Wrestling 101, we're not just the coolest. Pro Wrestling 101, we're not just the best. John and I, Pro Wrestling 101, we are just incredible. See you next time.